For this topic discussion, I feel it's very important to talk about the Great Depression. It's one of the most important economic periods in our history, and of course it's important to understand what led to the Great Depression and what was not the cause. So let's start off by saying there's no such thing as a free market where some central banking system determines what your interest rates are, or even determines what your money is, such as the fiat monetary system that we have today. Instead, a free market means that interest rates are determined by the market. In other words, it's driven by the laws of supply and demand. So therefore, interest rates are going to be determined in the market, not by a set group of people sitting in a central banking system manipulating interest rates of what you've seen for the past century or so. Free market money was basically money that was determined by the market. In other words, determined by the people. People decided that money would be the exchange from gold and silver. In other words, you used to have gold and silver, and during the 19th century they began trying and testing of the paper. This is what led to a boom and bust cycle, but most importantly, gold and silver was essentially what the market determined as what their money would be. In 1922, the Federal Reserve used open market operations to intervene with the market. Now what the word intervene simply means is it means that an outside entity has came between something and is interrupting and changing the course of its direction. Now, using open market operations in 1922, this gave the Federal Reserve the power to then manipulate the interest rates, to change the reserve ratios, to then print the fiat currency out of thin air. A fiat currency simply means that it's a currency backed by no true monetary value. In other words, a currency is not true money. True money is what you would have had through gold and silver. The Federal Reserve in 1922, taking control over the monetary supply, was then able to strip the gold standard from the currency, and therefore all you were left with was paper backed by no true value. It was basically debt printed out of thin air and loaned out in high interest. Basically, that's what was happening. They were printing large quantities of that fiat currency out of thin air and lending it out to the government for the government to increase the borrowing and spending of the fake counterfeit money. And this has been happening for decades. As a result of the open market operations, through the manipulating interest rates, changing reserve ratios, printing the fiat currency out of thin air, all of this led to inflation and then deflation. It created bubble after bubble after bubble, and that is eventually what led to the Great Depression of 1929. It would also be inaccurate to say that Calvin Coolidge had increased the tax rates, rather he decreased the tax rates during his time as presidency. Another thing to note is the fact that it was Mellon who was his secretary, and Mellon was also the secretary to Herbert Hoover when he took over in 1928-29. So Herbert Hoover, when he became the president, Mellon had advised him to basically let things liquidate because the market would correct itself. However, instead, Herbert Hoover refused to listen to him and continued on with the increased printing, borrowing and spending, which only led to a further problem within the market. In 1929, the unemployment rate stood at 3.2%. As we can see from this statistical table, we can see that the unemployment rate began from 3.2% and then 23.6% by 1932, and as we know, FDR took over in 1933 at an unemployment rate of 24.9%. We're told that FDR stepped in and that through government intervention in all of these government policies, they say that FDR came to the saviour and saved America from the Great Depression. In the year 1933, when he took over, yes, unemployment rate was at 24.9%, and to all credit to him, he managed to get it down to 14.3% in 1937. However, this was the lowest that FDR could get the unemployment rate to. So he was not the saviour of the Great Depression, because in the year 1938, we saw what was called the Roosevelt Recession. Now, the Roosevelt Recession drove unemployment rate back up to what we can see at 19.0%. You can then see that he was not a saviour of the Great Depression. He literally prolonged the Great Depression, and there was not a recovery until the year 1947, after the Second World War. Had Herbert Hoover listened to capitalist Mellon, his secretary, on leaving things to liquidate, the Great Depression would have arguably been over within the space of 2 years, because the market would have corrected itself. Unfortunately, as a result of all the increased printing, borrowing and spending that only prolonged the issue, and then the takeover of FDR and all these government interventionist policies, he did not save America from the Great Depression, he simply prolonged the Great Depression. Enjoy politics, history and economics? Love the message of liberty and interested in libertarianism? If so, with your support you can help drive this channel to greater heights, to reach out to a greater and wider audience, to spread the message of liberty. So be sure to hit the subscribe button on my channel page, and also if you want to keep notified of the videos I post, be sure to hit the bell icon. Since revamping my channel in my unfortunate absence for a spell, I'm now determined more than ever to take this channel to greater heights than before. Again, with your support, be sure to also smash that like button, as it will not only take this channel to greater heights, it will help push the message of liberty out to a wider audience. Be sure to also comment, favourite the video, playlist it and share it. Lastly, to those who have followed for so long, thank you for your continued loyal support as you help make this channel what it is. Thank you for watching. I shall talk to you later. Cheers.